Hello. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Trying to make sure that that is working right. That's always good to hear. Okay, cool. I'll wait a few minutes for a few other people to join if they feel like it. Doesn't hurt. Um, Other than that, would anyone like cute animal pictures while they wait? I can always supply those now. I can also start with a little bit of a background. So I am currently getting my degree in animal science and behavior online with Unity Environmental University. Um, they are like APA accredited. I've liked all the courses I've had there so far, and right now I help with a facility specifically for small mammal rehabilitation. So we mainly work with things like raccoons, possums, squirrels, occasionally a baby deer. I've also taken like coyotes and gray foxes before, but it's not as common. So my line of work that I've done so far really just small mammals, and I've learned quite a lot from doing this. I have to say. I'm very excited to share with everyone, and I think the niches that small mammals hold in ecosystems kind of remind me a lot of just trying to be a person, especially just in like day-to-day life. I kind of get what they mean when they say like cities are kind of urban jungles, because after watching a raccoon pull a squirrel's cage just to fuck with it, I kind of get it now. So, yeah, there's just a lot of different niches that small mammals hold that I just think are very useful to implement in day-to-day life, and a lot of them show a lot of adaptability to changing environments and circumstances that I think is really inspirational, I would say. And I guess like a basic overview here of what I'd like to do is um, from the things I've seen, how captive animals react with a going from captivity to the wild, and how we take a captive animal and get it to survive in the wild is a bit of a process that can span up to like 6 months typically. Um, so it's not very quick, and for them, that's basically their whole childhood into adulthood is trying to learn how to live, and we're helping them the whole process to make sure that they have the best chances. Um, so I think it'll be a fun talk. I would also like to do like a Q&A section at the end, so I think that'll be good too. Um, I'm also gonna try and hit like, what if my kin type isn't very wild? What then? Is there still anything that I can implement? And actually, yeah, a lot. We also have a few education animals that can't be released back, and I've worked with them some. And their kind of way of life is definitely a bit different from animals that are going to be released. I would say it's a lot more relaxed with human culture, but I'll get into that more once I start properly, I guess. Aside from that, uh, I hope everyone's doing good. Hope everyone's been enjoying the convention so far. I've been having pretty fun myself. I really liked the last panel, actually. That was very fun. I don't mind the smaller group either. So if anyone wants to ask like very specific questions or really get into anything, I think this is a pretty good convention to do it in, since the numbers are a little bit smaller and more manageable. It makes for great opportunities for really long discussions, which is nice. I will go ahead and start though. So just to reiterate, my name's Hudson. I've also go by Scar. I get my degree in animal science and behavior at Unity Environmental University, currently working towards a bachelor's, and I am working with small mammal rehabilitation. So today I am talking about the lessons I've learned from animals that are raised in captivities from babies and don't know anything else to being released into the wild and successfully living and thriving that way. And I feel like those skills are actually quite important to other kin and Therians as well, as a lot of it focuses on how to hone your instincts. So we're going to go over a few terms real quick before we get into the more in-depth stuff. So whenever I say like the word rewilding, it is kind of a broad term and actually has some language shifting going on, similar to like what otherkin means or what alter human means, funnily enough, to the point where someone had to make a whole paper about it, which I linked in the sources. Um, but in this specific instance, we are talking about rewilding an individual animal over an entire ecosystem. So we're focused on one animal learning how to survive in the wild. Another thing to note is whenever you do release an animal in the wild, there's two generally accepted methods to do it. One is called a hard release. This is something I feel like most people have seen if you're watching like an animal documentary or a news clip where they're like, we're releasing wolves back into, I don't know, Britain. And they've got a giant crate, cameras behind them, and they just open the crate and the animal runs out into the forest and everyone's like, woo, yeah, we did it, guys. That's a hard release where the animal is just brought to a location, they let it go, and whatever happens, good luck. Um, this is actually seen as less successful than the next term, which is called soft releases. So, soft releases are when you actually make a location in the environment that you're going to release the animal in that has food, water, and shelter. And they actually kind of live there for a little bit before they're released. And then the release is very slow, as in basically what you do is you keep that habitat there, you open the door, the animal can leave and come back as they please to get food and water, and they also get the chance to explore the environment around them and not migrate as much. As some animals, like with hard releases, they might just pick a direction and go until they find something. With soft releases, it incentivizes them more to stay like around where they've been released, which is really good sometimes if they are being released in like a conservation and the other areas around that conservation are where they can be hunted. So that's it helps a lot. Generally, animals that are soft released have a better survival method. What that means for other kin is that you don't have to just jump into a bunch of skills and see if you suddenly have figured out your kin type or know like all your instincts all of a sudden. You don't have like this sudden wow moment where you're like on the ground shifting into a werewolf. That doesn't have to happen. You can just take like one or two skills and be like, that was cool. I liked that. I didn't like that. And then you can workshop it over time. So, some skills that I wanted to go over. Let me go ahead and pull that up. Uh, what I would suggest is that finding, I think, the correct environment that you really enjoy is extremely helpful. Trying to release an animal into an environment that really doesn't suit it to the best degree is going to struggle a lot more than an animal that has like the most opportune environment. So figuring out like where you need to go that makes you happy, whether that's the forest, a cave, wherever. I think a top priority is finding a place you can easily access that you don't really have to pay for because that can get costly. Um, Trying to do hikes around that area and then getting involved in some way. I've found volunteering or working at locations that I feel really connected to has made my other Kennedy feel much more solid and grounded because it's kind of always there and I'm always being reminded about it. So I can't really just like, I'm not getting like this whiplash of working an office job and then suddenly I'm home and I can be an animal. Instead, I'm just like an animal all the time, like I kind of want to be, and I don't have to so much worry about like how I get into that space. So I will note again, rewilding is a really long process, like 6 months, but a lot of the work actually happens whenever the animal is mostly matured and is given a bunch of new experiences that helps sharpen their survival skills. So for raccoons, for example, they really need to learn how to eat stuff like clams. They need to know how to forage in a river or water source. They need to know how to look for insects or hunting other animals. They got to know how to claim resources and be territorial. All of those things they can't really do in a captive environment because they're not really allowed to interact with other animals. So, what would I do as a human to replicate that? Meeting other kin IRL, that is a really good start. One thing that really helped me was going to like an other kin event held IRL. I think it was like a rave that was pretty underground, and most people there had some kind of like other kin gear. One of the DJs was other kin. Um, it may sound difficult to find, but this was just someone who set up a party at a park, like a park, which was a few picnic tables and a projector for bands, and basically allotted a time and set it to go. Like it was really nothing too complicated. I think the hard part is making that community at first, and exploring and getting to meet other people, which is very crucial, I think, to learning how you're going to interact with others as an alter human community. So, environment, very good. Hobbies, also really good. I really like volunteering. Doing like wildlife work for me has helped a lot in seeing where I can improve my own identity. So, another thing we could look at is trying to figure out like how to make a territory, how to make something feel like it's yours on an instinctual level over just a human level. For me, like owning a house as a person and owning a house as an animal feel very different. And I oftentimes will feel like when I got my first apartment, I was like, I did decorate it like most people do, and I still don't really feel at home, and kind of felt like I was struggling to kind of feel safe in my own space that I had created. So I kind of had to do things like a dog bed helped me. I got a lot of forest posters to put up around it to kind of try and keep me in that space, even though it was very like a natural setting for me. Um, I kept rocks that I had taken that reminded me of certain environments. Dried flowers helped me a lot. And then some vulture culture. Having some animal skulls for my kin type kind of felt euphoric, so I just had them on my walls as displays, and that was very nice. Definitely made me feel more at home. So, another thing to consider would be managing resources. A lot of animals in captivity will struggle with trying to figure out where food is in the wild, how to keep that, how to create a stable environment that they can live in and actually survive. Um, Often there are going to be a lot of circumstances that change throughout life that you can't really control. Um, Really, what we're trying to focus on is workshopping skills to always feel like the situation is survivable and your alter humanity doesn't need to be repressed just because something happened. Um, like, moving to a new place can be very stressful. Uh, I know for me, I definitely went into human mode for quite a while, just trying to get that done. Um, Packing up boxes can feel very unnatural for me. Saying my environment is now just like mostly human-esque looking can really take a toll on my mental health to some degree. So it's, I think, very important to take your identity as serious as the human one. And if you're not feeling connected to it, being like, okay, I think I need to take a walk. I need to smell flowers, look at grass, forage maybe. Um, I've found for like my specific kin type, hikes at night are pretty good. If I'm not too scared, that is. Those can be very nice, or finding like a hiking trail that isn't typically well traveled on, for me, was very nice to get some peace and quiet without having to talk to people all the time. Uh, on a more spiritual note, trying to learn how to uh, talk with animals on their language. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to chirp back to a squirrel, but understanding when like a squirrel grunts, it's meaning, oh, I'm very territorial about my food right now. And you in turn stepping away and being like, okay, I'm sorry, bro. I didn't mean to offend you. Um, Having those conversations, like from human to animal, brings me much closer to my kin type, and it makes me feel more integrated with the environments that I'm in. Same with doing conservation work. If I'm pulling up invasive grass for like 5 hours a day, I definitely feel a deeper connection to the space I'm in, and like I'm contributing both with my human self and my kin type self for making like the environment around me a better place. It's also just very rewarding to see like an environment flourish without invasives, and knowing that like you took part in that. It can be fulfilling in some way, I think. And so I think I might focus in on like talking to animals a little bit. I think it would be a great idea to learn about your local environment quite a bit just to see, what do those animals do from the smallest lizard and plant? How do they all fit together? And then kind of recognizing how you fit in there yourself. And that can be from like, how does my house change the species makeup or the niches around the forest? Did I create a microenvironment whenever I created a field around my house? What animals does that bring in? Do I want that? Do I want to change that environment and plant different herbs or bushes to entice other animals to come in? Do I want to help a certain species because it's struggling? For me, all these things basically weave together as both my kin type and my identity of being like a steward to the environment. So, um, definitely a lot of research, which is okay. It doesn't have to be something that you know instantly. For me, I've been doing plant identification, I think, for like 2 years, and I really only super know like 5 plants. It's a long process, and that is okay. Same with animals. I really struggle with some animal behaviors, and that's normal as an animal to not know what another animal is saying, especially like captive animals that didn't grow up around it super frequently. We see a lot of issues with conflict because what a grunt means for a squirrel is way different for like a raccoon, and now they are fighting and one of them doesn't even know it. The other one wants to try and like break bread, so to speak. So if you ever do go out in the forest and you're like, man, I feel like I'm not making any progress, that's fine. So does the possum that got released in that forest too, I'm sure. I'm sure they felt just as lost, and your experience is not alone just for being human bodied. Some other things, I think foraging helped me quite a lot. We really have to teach captive animals how to forage, and a lot of animals forage very differently. Like squirrels, for instance, will climb up trees to find optimal food, like fresh grown leaves, sometimes nesting material, nuts, seeds. All of that can be very beneficial for them. A raccoon is more so like a ground dwelling species. They don't look in trees as much. They're trying to look along riverbeds. So, trying an array of things if you don't know what your kin type is, just to see what feels more euphoric. That may take the form in picking apples, picking flowers, planting herbs or gardening. It could be hunting. Uh, just know to, look up your local laws and become educated on that as like a full hobby and part of yourself rather than I'm gonna run out into the woods and shoot a random animal and see if that does something. It's very important to figure out like, if I am gonna do this, how does it affect the ecological system? How is my impact going to carry out long term instead of short term? Um, let me see here what else we got. Uh, so for the animals that are more captive, like let's say you're like a dogkin type, what do you do about that? I think captive animals or animals that may just not feel strong instincts enough to like really go out in the wild and survive super well perfectly fine. It just means that those kin types and animals are more so adapted to a human-friendly or human-centric way of living, which can be different, but not bad. In fact, it may actually benefit you more once you start leaning into that, of being like, well, I more so want to go to like a zoo. I would like a consistent feeding schedule, even. I don't really want to forage super hard. I just kind of want to go and get Burger King or something where it feels like I've got my full diet presented to me and I don't super have to worry about how to get that or claiming my own territory or anything. That, like, if that's not your jam, that's great. It makes life, I think, a bit easier. I've definitely considered like a dogkin type before, and in those moments, like consistency, reliability, and stability over adaptability, surviving, and things of that nature, like I guess like fierceness or learning to flee or fight. Uh, those instincts take a seat while reliability and consistency come forward, and you're harnessing that more so. Um, so I think at this point, would anyone like me to elaborate or give specific examples for their kin type? I'm open to giving suggestions. I, though I like mainly work with small mammals, I'm still getting my bachelor's in animal science and behavior, so I can at least give some ideas of what you might want to try. um, if anyone has any ideas. Uh, I'd also be taking questions at this time, and I can elaborate on a few more concepts if anyone's confused. And I think I will leave a little note while everyone's typing too. If you have like some disabilities that really has you struggling with like hiking or doing anything super active, or maybe you have to be like kind of stuck in bed for a while, I do have some suggestions for that as well. For me, what I do whenever I'm experiencing something like that, I've tried my best to basically like find a window if I've got a window and set up a micro environment out there that brings animals into that area that I can at least watch. So my brain doesn't feel so alone from being like in a human space all the time, to where I can at least look out and see, oh, there's still wildlife. I'm still a part of this. We're good to go. Um, like a bird feeder, that's an easy one. Uh, Another one is a squirrel feeder, also very easy. Just planting a few fruiting bushes, very good. You usually don't even need to water those if they're native, so you'll see a lot of wildlife come up. If you don't have a window, you can also just make super micro environments, like a 10-gallon tank with some substrate, uh, some local plants even, so you don't have to spend money on that, and some sun could really just, and being able to look at just bugs, like a few roly-polies can help my brain a lot instead of just watching TV. Taking a break like that can help. Let's see. So for a Raven Therian and Pescatarian, I would recommend there are some dishes for whole fish, where like salt-baked fish, you could scavenge carry on that way. So you would just gut the fish at the belly. There should be some YouTube tutorials on how to do that. Coat it in salt and egg whites, and you would bake that for a bit. You would have to pick the meat from the skeleton, and I think that would be really good. You could also do that with mussels and clams. Also would be a lot of fun. And then you could, let's see, if you wanted something a little bit more fun, like there is the, what's it called? It's like a dessert called like Muddy Dirt or something, where you can take like chocolate pudding, crushed up Oreos to simulate dirt, and then put gummy worms hidden inside. So as you're eating, you would find worms to eat as well. That would be like a nice variety mix-up. Recommendations for a fox Therian. Let's see. I think like berry assortments, and learning to forage berries would be very beneficial. I wouldn't say mushrooms unless you're willing to completely like go in on that and learn from a mushroom like identifier who has experience with foraging, because that can be really dangerous. um, so I would stick with like berries and easily identifiable plants as a start. That would be really good. Besides that, I think like simulating hunting in tall grass would be very beneficial, or looking in burrows. You may be able to find some burrowing skills. I think like clamming on beaches would be very similar to that. If you wanted to do something that was human-centric, you could use a metal detector and just look for metal, uh, which would force you to dig, which is really the point. Um, I think denning would be really good for a fox Therian as well. Um, so for me, I kind of like got that urge at one point, and what I did is I basically just made a stick wall that was a half circle as a decoration, basically up to 3 or 4 feet to where I felt covered, and it looked decorative so people didn't think it was too weird. And I got some privacy. The entire aspect of sitting down and a just doing that every day for a while, and I still do it, was very nice way to connect. Let's see. For dinosaurs, I think it depends on what kind of dinosaur for a theropod, because like I really hyperfixated on Ceratosaurus and kind of know that they're quite a bit different from, say, like a Tyrannosaurus or a like a Microraptor. So I guess it kind of depends on what size and where it's located, but I would totally answer that and give it a shot. While I'm waiting on that, recommendations for a maned wolf and a for a maned wolf, they are actually I believe they eat insects and forage more often than actually hunting, if I remember correctly. So it would be worth a shot to either look into keeping insects, learning about insects, um, ant hills. Uh, I wonder if bug pinning would actually be fun as a maned wolf. You would have to learn a lot about your prey, and at the same time you would be working very intimately with them. You could also raise something like a rhino beetle, or maybe even just a native species. And I feel like that would be very rewarding since it's like, food. Hello, food. How are you? With fruits, I think foraging again, that would be very good. Taking hikes and spotting which fruits are edible and not edible, that would be very cool. Um, Anything else? I think they live in dense jungle, so learning either finding some more denser brush around where you live or just growing some bushes, maybe, if you have the ability to. Maybe even just hanging up some blankets so it feels more claustrophobic, I guess, or the space feels more full of things. That would be very good. Advice for people who might have other people around. That is a fun one, and I feel that. Um, so yeah, I don't live like on an isolated island. It's definitely a give and take. So for me, I really have to lean into accepting like I'm a furry. uh, for me, that was like an easy out for saying like I'm doing this stuff because I just like animals and I'm just kind of animalistic. Also, with my career being a park ranger, I get away really easily with saying I'm a park ranger. I like animals. My boyfriend's a taxidermist. What do you want from me? And everyone's like, okay. So finding like a human like equivalent that's like close-ish to what you're doing and saying like, yeah, that's just kind of like who I am without having to outright say your other kin, it helps a lot. It also helps from like having to have like an awkward discussion with people you barely know. If they just think it's a hobby, they're like, yeah, okay. Especially for me, since I'm in like Texas and that's a very Republican based area, when I say I'm into hunting and like uh what's it called? Like taxidermy, those are big winners. I can tell strangers that and they're like, "Hey man, that's great. I love that shit too." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool." And I don't need to cause a conflict. Um, if you have roommates, for me, I kind of just said I was artistic and like kind of spiritual. I hung up deer skulls and stuff and had pictures of forests, and that's basically the excuse I gave them. And that kind of worked. If that still feels like it doesn't quite match, I would just kind of workshop like what hobbies do you like? Which ones would make sense to what you've told people already? And what would be not too weird, but like weird enough to be like, okay, yeah, that is kind of strange, but whatever. um, so for horse and pony Therians, let's see. Um, I feel like that is a lot of wandering. I would suggest hiking if you're able-bodied. That's going to be, I think, pretty important, actually. if you can find a place to just roam and then have a group of friends that you can hang out with while you're doing that to feel a bit safer, I think that would be a good start. For specifically eating, uh, when there's no berries, that's okay. There are some plants that are edible, like leaf-wise. I know in Texas there are a few. You would probably have to look up an edible plants book, but some like really easy ones are wild garlic or wild onion. And they are pretty stinky, but that would at least be a first for being like, I got food for my horse self. I just have to wash it off and then I'm good to go, bro. Um, I think uh, just running freely time to time, whether you're hiking, would probably be good. And uh, I think horses have it pretty like you can live a human-centric life and be a horse okay enough. Leg issues, that is rough. If you could use a four-wheeler, car, bike, or something motorized, basically, I think you would get a similar feeling. If that's too much, you might be able to find just a nice overlook to sit down and stare at. And I feel like that might bring the feeling of surveying, which I believe is important to horses for looking for predators, and that might invoke at least some natural instincts. Leaving an open window for wind so you can smell the air also might be a good one too. For Megaraptors, I wish I knew more about Megaraptors, but I'm pretty sure they're more carnivore centric than Ceratos, if I'm correct, with the long claws, and they don't really seem like they want to get in a swamp like a Ceratosaurus does. I could be mistaken though. Yeah, that's a mood. Um, in any case, I would suggest getting like a dog toy or any stuffed animal that you're okay with ripping up and do that. Um, just destroy it. I think that goes for any predator, but literally just if you can, rip it up if that is too much or a like physically demanding. I would take scissors and pre-cut it up a bit so it's easier to rip apart. Uh, Besides that, lots of meat. Anything with blood would be good. Um, and then Megaraptors definitely go in like a variety of biomes, so I think it would be kind of starting with looking at photos of which ones bring euphoria, and then going from there. If you know more or less where you, like what specific Megaraptor you might be, and where you were roughly located or what that looked like, trying to find a dig site maybe that had that, I guess, like time period that you can see is kind of cool. Um, at least in the United States, it is kind of fairly common, at least in Texas, where it's a really good dig site, to find like stuff from the Cretaceous or the Mesozoic, where you can just take a rock and take that home and be like, that's a Cretaceous rock. I've got that now. And always kind of have a part of that with you. You could also possibly buy small rock samples like that online. I couldn't imagine that being too expensive, especially when it's not a fossil. Um, what else we got here? Uh, Dragon that hunts fish and seals, flying and diving. I would suggest this is going to be an extreme suggestion, but skydiving if you have the funds. Besides that, some less pricey options would be zip lining, biking would be good, and just using a swing on a playground. All of those wouldn't be too bad. I think rope swings would probably give you a little bit more freedom in how you want to move. If you wanted to feel more drag, you could try just putting on some like paper wings or something to feel something pulling. Let's see. For like food, going to a fish market would be good for sure for fishing. You could just fish, like as a hobby. Fly fishing is very like focus. It's very focus intensive, but you could do something as simple as like I used to like feeding fish, where I'm not even trying to catch them. I would just put a frog on like a line of fishing string and throw it out and let the fish eat it. And that like feeling of watching the fish come up, take something, and you're really focused in on it reminded me a lot of hunting for some reason. It was, I always quite liked it, and I got to see the fish a bit more up close than I usually would. For seals, that would be, I would recommend like maybe pork might be your best bet, or like pork belly specifically, where there's a really thick layer of like blubber, so to speak, to get through before you're finally eating something. You might not want to eat all of that as a person, but the act of actually digging through it and finding little scraps of meat might be fun as more of like an enrichment than an actual meal. Let's see here. Yeah, a lot of the hobbies I would recommend are basically like I would try to not be around a lot of people if your like kin type is more feral, just so you're not being constantly reminded you're a person, which is kind of why I don't really recommend like an amusement park, because like subconsciously for me, if I'm somewhere like that, all I'm seeing is concrete and crowds of people, and it takes me out of it. So, more so, if you can just tie a line from one tree to another and slide down that alone, I think that is kind of more fulfilling for me as a kin type. Yup. Uh, I definitely used to have more social anxiety before I started, uh, I guess, meeting more other kin IRL. That's definitely a bit more of a process, to the point to where I'm like not even really online anymore because I'm putting most of my effort into that. I would say it's very rewarding and worth a shot. Even if it's super awkward at first, once you build a few bonds, I think my pack is going on 3 years now, it becomes really beneficial and becomes like a really stable way to be able to hone in on that um, animal aspect, and still be social. Like, some of my favorite things I've ever done is just getting like 3 or 4 animals out into a forest at night and everyone's howling. Even if I don't howl naturally, just feeling that connection, it helps a lot. Trying to work your way up to actually doing that if social anxiety is hindering you. For me, that was therapy. Some advice I got from therapy was just like going up and complimenting someone, um, and just doing that maybe once a day to a stranger, just being like, I like your hat," and stuff like that can slowly lessen social anxiety from what I've heard. If it's like a deeper reason, I can't really help with that, but therapy does help. There are some free online therapy books that you might be able to dig up. Um, Other than that, it is a long road. I do get that. I was in therapy for 6 years and I'm still going. Yeah, I see like that one convert or I guess like input from Sweet about like I love flying at high speeds. My feeble human body. Yeah, me too. I really want to climb trees. I don't have the balance for that, so I have to like settle on climbing like one tree branch and being afraid about it. When that happens, I just remind myself again, like I am a captive raised animal. I never really super learned how to do this, and I'm not super equipped for it, but I'm gonna do my best here. Sometimes we are just not the ideal like concept of what that animal is, and that's okay. Exactly. That's how I feel. I'm like I climbed a tree once a month today, and that's like that's what I've done. If my activities were like what my identity was, I'd probably be closer to like an ungulate, like a deer or a horse, because I don't like climbing. I don't super like swimming, and I don't like flying. I just want to look at grass. I just want to eat a fruit, and I don't want to get completely destroyed by some random person. So I'm always got my head on a swivel. But instead, I'm supposed to be a wolf, supposedly, allegedly. Yeah, playgrounds are good for that. I recommend playgrounds at night, even if it's trespassing. I mean, like, don't trespass, you know? Oh, that's very bad. I would never say for you to do that. But if you found yourself in that situation, it's very fun. Yep. Yeah. Especially if you look up, like, what specific things do people do for animals with those disabilities and what enrichment they give them, that can help a lot for relating that back to you. Um, I know for, like, we have a raccoon that has a neurological issue, so we put up more pillows for him so he doesn't have to constantly run into metal. So that's like a special accommodation he gets. He gets lots of pillows. If someone had like a balance condition and we're also a raccoon, I would recommend that so they feel a little bit more akin to how people would actually treat that animal in that situation. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it is interesting how media kind of like tricks us into thinking that every animal is very strong and perfect. And like, I feel like I see a lot of photos or images of, say, like wolves that are just like at their peak. They're not injured at all. They don't have ticks or anything, but like most wolves, they're not doing that great. It does help, I think. It helped me at least seeing animals that were captive raised kind of be doofy and they don't fully know what they're doing. Like, even giving like my dog like a farm raised egg that I know doesn't have salmonella or anything, I'll be like, all right, here you go. You're a dog. You should know what to do with the egg. And she's looking at me like, I don't. so I have to sit down and like teach her like you gotta crack it. You eat what's inside. Like you're definitely not alone, human bodied or animal, for sometimes just not knowing at all like what to do or how to navigate something. It's like a universal problem, I would say. Yeah, arthritis, that's a fun one. I've heard braces help a lot with arthritis, but honestly, it's not my wheelhouse, so I'm not fully sure. Oh, you know what? Before I forget, for the person that was a raven and wanted to cash, you might just be able to buy a little wooden chest and put whatever in there, like in your closet, and that's kind of just your caching area. You can just put things in your pocket and put it in that chest later. I think that would be a fun way to be able to do that and it still feel, yeah. Any shiny thing? Bottle caps. I really got obsessed with bottle caps as a kid for some reason. I wanted all of them. That was fun. Ooh, collecting stones is really good. As my job as a park ranger, it's my job to go look for things too. So I'm just constantly looking for stuff people dropped, and it does kind of feel like I'm just a crow. I'm like, oh, look, I found goggles, someone's sunglasses. Now I gotta go put it in this box. Ooh, that's very cool. Gem collection is very fun. The ocean just seems like a really good place to just find trinkets all the time. It seems like trinket heaven. I don't know if I should live by the ocean because I'd be picking up everything. I will imagine the collection with my brain, and it is very cool. Feather collection's really cool. Some natural history museums around me participate in like vulture culture, where if you, I don't think they do feathers, but if you find, say, bones, you can trade it in and they will give you something they found. So some zoos near me, say you give them a whitetail skull, they might give you like an impala skull from a previous like specimen they had. And that whole like trading thing is just, I feel like that would be very good for like ravens or anything that has kind of a little resource trading behavior. I loved catching minnows. I was at like a creek all the time as a kid. That was my happy place. It's definitely not ideal for them, but looking back, it is like rose tinted glasses. It's kind of hard to find naturally occurring bones depending on where you are, actually. Um, like some of the places around me have facilities or like infrastructure to where they will collect roadkill instead of just letting it sit. So it's really hard to find any kind of like bones around that area. And if you don't have access to like a giant field or a forest, it can be even harder. I will also officially end the panel since it's 5 o'clock. But this was a really fun conversation. I'm glad everyone stopped by. Um, I hope everyone gained some sort of knowledge or something to apply to their life from this. That would be the goal. Um, and thanks everyone for coming. I appreciate it.